Boom, we are live. So a bit of a different one for everyone today. Vicky, the usual co-host, is not with us. She's got an emergency. But that's a fantastic opportunity for us to talk with more people that are in our world doing more exciting things and really building businesses, because we talk a lot very academically about optimizing business and process, and we've kind of been finding our way with it. I think it'd be really great for us to do a bit of a case study and talk to someone who's in the midst of growing something absolutely awesome. So today we're joined by Milly. Milly is the founder and creator of the Generalist World community. You can find them at generalist.world. Welcome, Milly.
Hey, Sam. Fantastic to be here. I am really excited to have this chat.
Yeah, you and me both. Let's just start by being really, open with the community, with our listeners. I found you online through Twitter and saw you were building like this awesome community and was, like we just said in like our preamble, super, super excited to see what it was about. Like, not sure this is the thing, but sure that I saw you've got traction and there's something here, and maybe it's this thing or something that comes beyond. How did you come to be doing this, and why is it the thing that you're focusing on now?
Great question. I guess it all starts, my entire career has kind of led up to this. And if I'm honest, it's been a total accident. Like, I don't think anyone sets out in their career to be like, I'm going to be a generalist. It is something that finds you. So my entire career has been super squiggly. I've kind of touched every part of business except for probably engineering and design. And that's what I like. I like that. I like the challenge of solving problems and figuring stuff out as I go. I find that like really, really rewarding. And so I realized that I love to work this way. And I also realized that early stage companies love to hire me because, would you rather hire one person instead of three? And I also realized I didn't know anyone else who really worked like me. So there were all these kind of ideas floating around in my head that I was like, why is there no space and resource for people like me? And to be honest, Sam, at this time, I didn't even have the language for generalist. I was like, I do everything. When people asked me what I did, I'd ramble for like 2 minutes trying to explain all of the things that I do. I didn't have a nice, tidy title, which is what the world always wants. And so I just kind of got tired of living in this really, really specialized world and not feeling like I had a place in it. So it's that whole thing of like, you see a problem, you can either complain about it or you can try and do something about it. So that was the crux of Generalist World, just bringing folks together who work like me and offering support, helping them find really, really meaningful work has been something that's like been really rewarding on my end. And yeah, we're just getting started. We're a couple of months in and it's been a bit of a whirlwind.
So it blows my mind, honestly, watching what's going on, because I'm just going to, I said today that I really wanted to get into the tactical and practical of like how you built this community, because there's quite a lot of buzz around community, the term community at the moment. And I think it'd be really helpful for people to understand why that's worked. But before we do, I just want to question a few things, really, I guess, and pull on that value prop, because I was also kind of like, is this language right? A generalist? Because everyone says, niches get riches. It's a Sam Parr phrase from the My First Million Trends, The Hustle. Like, he says this, and I was like, generalist? Like, well, that's the opposite. So what's the niche, to use the British way of saying it, and the Australian, not the American way of saying it? I was like, what's the niche? Because essentially you're talking about problem solving, and what you're doing is super credible, because in the community, there's VCs, there's CEOs, there's founders that have exited at 7 figures. There's founders that, I think there's a couple of 8-figure people in there. There's COO, like there's some real credible people. And when you go onto your website, like it's, we're a community. We also are kind of like a job board, and you probably hate me for saying that. I don't know if that's really the right way of describing it, but then you've got some big names on there like Tesla, Berkeley, IBM, like Airbnb. There's like some big Apple, big stamps of social proof on there, and you're like, they're serious. So I guess as well, like I'm rambling a bit, but like I wanted to get involved because I'm an engineer, but I've also done procurement roles, I've done commercial roles, I've done sales, I've done operations, but I'm an engineer at heart and I identify with this. Well, I'm just a problem solver. Like, whatever the problem is, I can just solve it. And the generalist thing really spoke to me. And so I guess what I want to ask about is, you've got this outward persona. I think people are joining you because they identify as, yeah, I identify with that role. But why do you think it's had so much growth, and where do you see that growth going? Like, why is the traction so strong? I want to understand like the mechanics of your mind. Like, why do you think this has taken off and grown so quickly?
It's actually a really, really good question. I think it comes back to what you first said when we spoke about the language generalist. I think society, the world, thinks that a generalist is generally like low level, broad knowledge, doesn't have much to contribute. And I think why people are ridiculously excited to finally be in this space is because not only are we saying there's more of us, we're saying it's valuable. Like, this is, you can be at the very, very top. You can be in leadership. You can be a founder. You can exit. You can be C-suite, and you can be a generalist. It's saying that you don't have to specialize. It's like, it's not one or the other, right? It's not like specialize and move up. It's like you can keep wearing these many hats, work to how you work best, which is multidisciplinary, and you can still be successful. I think it's the first time for many people that anyone's ever told them that. And I think there's like real like value and reassurance and being like, oh, wow, so I can actually be who I am. I don't have to wear a mask. I don't have to put on a face. I can be who I am, but I can still meet my goals and be successful. Like, that is a really exciting thing that for the first time in their entire lives are hearing. And like you said, the caliber of the community is bonkers. Like, sometimes I go in there and I'm like borderline intimidated because I'm like, wow, everyone is like so talented. They come from these incredible backgrounds. Like, some people are just like super brains in there. And so to get all of these kind of like really talented, diversely talented people together creates this like perfect storm, like this really interesting mix, which I'm a part of a lot of communities. And personally, I've never felt what we have in Generalist World anywhere else. And I think it's just giving people permission to come as they are, but to also know that this is like valued and they can do, it's like helping us find our place in the world, which if you can help people do that, that's enormous. It can be like a life-changing thing to be a part of. So I think that's why people are really excited in the first place.
Well, do you know, it's funny you say that about people feeling like they belong, because I think we both know April McLean ran the Trends community.
I do, yeah. Big fan of April.
Yeah, she's awesome. When she left, Ethan Brooks, another great guy, put together, some leaving videos. And I said in that leaving video, when I joined that community, it was like first day in the playground or walking into a party. You want someone to run over and be like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. Like, come over, let me introduce you to these other people. And I like felt that belonging. And you do the same in the generalist community. I was like, oh, wow, okay, these guys are great. So, right, I want to get into some figures because I think the value proposition, if anyone listened to the last few minutes of audio or watched the video, they'll either be identifying or not identifying. They'll either understand the value of it or not. Let's get into some figures. If you don't mind sharing, by all means say no if that's a personal question. So you started at 0. When did you start at 0, members of the community?
So I had the idea in May.
May 2022?
Yeah, so a couple of months ago, May 2022. And I started speaking to people kind of like one-to-one. My very first post about it was in the Trends community. And I was like, I think I'm a generalist. Anyone else? And there was just this barrage of comments because, right, like entrepreneurs, founders, like this is the exact kind of person that makes up a generalist. Basically, anytime I post somewhere, I get like a big reaction. And so when that happens online, when there's a big reaction to something, it's really hard to get people's attention these days. So when there's a big, strong emotional reaction to something, you've got to step back a little bit and be like, okay, so people feel, when I speak about my experience here, people feel that as well.
You're focusing on the figures. Yeah, so but I want to go back to that because we did a recording, I think it was in episode 2, like how to start a business that doesn't suck. And I said, don't start a business. Don't fanny around with all the accounting and systems and websites. Like your MVP is just to get clear on your value proposition and put it in front of people one to one and then one to many in the community. So for clarity, the way you got started was with a Facebook post and some conversations. Like, is that how you started the Generalist community?
Exactly how I started.
And what did you have like tech-wise, tech stack? Like, did you have a website at that point? I know you've built loads of stuff for other businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. And we're recording on Friday, September 30th, the 11 a.m. GMT, BST, actually, it's summertime still. What are the numbers today? Specifically, number in the community, because there's a free tier and a paid tier.
Yes, so we started in May 2022, so a couple of months ago, with these kind of one-to-one conversations. There was no tech. It was me reaching out to people on Facebook Messenger, on LinkedIn. Everything was happening behind closed doors. Then the conversations, there were so many people that I was finding that I was like, I actually can't keep up with all of these conversations. So I popped them in this Slack channel. And at this stage, I had no idea. It wasn't really a plan. It was like, okay, all these people seem like they'd get along and they'd have a really interesting conversation. Pop them all in together. So by June 2022, so a couple of months ago, we probably had around 100 people. And by July, probably about 400.
So 1 month in, you had 100 people.
It happened really quick. When I realized there was a bit of a buzz, I pulled together a very basic landing page using Softer. And it wasn't pretty or anything. It just was like, I'm creating a space for generalists. Pop your email in. And that's how we found our first, probably over 100 people. And
it was just the value proposition. That was it.
Yeah. And like, it really speaks to people. Like you said, if people are listening to this, they're either completely tuned in right now or they've tuned out. And that tells you if you're a generalist or if you're not. I think that kind of summed it up. So when people read it or they hear it and it resonates like deeply. So it was completely fine for us to just have a really basic landing page. You could put your email in and then I was just manually adding people to Slack. And up until today, so we're now around 90 days, I would say, from the time I properly launched a Slack to now, we're at nearly 900 members. And I have actually closed off the membership. So it's on a wait list. And I can go into reasons if you like as to why that is. But yeah, that's where we're at.
So I've got like secondhand excitement over here because you're exploding. Like you've got product market fit from the off and it's going to go exponential. And it's now just a case of you've now got a scaling problem, which is awesome. We are very focused on people that are 6-figure business owner wanting to get to the 7-8 figures. You're clearly going to do the 7-8 figure bit. You've just got product market fit. I say you've just got product market fit. Like your execution is awesome as well. I think it'd be really, really, really helpful. I know it's what I would want or would have wanted a while ago to focus on that 0 to 1 stage. So you said back in May, like, well, maybe this is an idea. I think it's really helpful and no one ever talks about it. Like, well, you've got bills to pay, right? I heard you relocated with your husband to, you live on an island with like, what, 100 people, 200 people? Like not many other people. Like, how did you practically afford the time and space to go, do you know what, I'm going to try this? And what sort of parameters did you have around those decisions?
That's a great question. And you're right. No one speaks about this. So it was probably in July that I had quit my role. I was working with a mental health tech startup called bravely.io, which I absolutely adored. First people to really, truly allow me to be my generalist self. They gave me the role of director of miscellaneous. So I actually owe a lot of Generalist World to Bravely propping me up and allowing me to work across all of these different things.
Was that employed or was that as a freelancer or a contractor?
I was self-employed with Bravely. So I kind of work across a few different projects. I worked with Bravely for about 10 months. I also have been working with another business in the States called Move Over Bob. It's all about getting women into the construction industry. And I still have my role with Move Over Bob. So that kind of pay the bills. Like I can increase or decrease my hours there as much as I need. So it's not like I've gone from full salary to like nothing. I still have some of this like consulting work. And I now am so fortunate that I have a decent amount of revenue coming in from Generalist World. So on the community side, I believe we just crossed our £3,000 mark in 3 months, which, on track, that's pretty good.
But the money is a lagging measure of what's working, in my opinion. You're getting the signups, you're getting the connection. It's just a case of now monetizing. You're building the community. So I really appreciate you being so open and honest about the figures, because I think this gets glossed over. I mean, I say we, but it's really me, lovingly refer to the 4-hour work week as like the Bible, because it's a great story, which is what you always remember. You always remember the opening of, he starts by doing some international dance competition, but then there's great frameworks in there. What is talked about and completely overlooked, it's not one day I'm doing this and now I've walked into this job with security that's a business. No, it's a transition, and you are responsible for that transition. There's no fairness, there's no rules in it. It's on you. Like, you are assuming all of that risk. And I think it's really helpful for you to be like, look, I've got this thing, and it's probably going to be pretty big. Like, let's be real. You've got a huge email list very quickly. You've got a very, very high quality, high net worth community in there. It's obviously going to be really successful, but you are still mitigating that risk by, well, I'm going to generate revenue, doing this thing. So I think that's fascinating. I would also be interested, I think the answer is probably self-explanatory. What made you decide to bootstrap versus go raise some funding? Because, debt's was fairly cheap in May. It's getting more expensive as we get into Q4 of 2022. What made you, bootstrap versus raise funding?
So at heart, I'm a builder, and I have bootstrapped everything I've ever done. Every company I've ever worked for, every company I've ever built, every company I've ever launched, I've bootstrapped it myself. So I feel like I've got a bit of I wouldn't say like a chip on my shoulder about it, but I'm really passionate about making sure that I can make money on standing on my own 2 feet without relying on external funding to at least get me started. So, but in saying that, I think Generalist World is perhaps the first thing I've really worked in where I'm like, okay, I could see, not yet, but soon, how funding could be a real asset. And I think it's coming at, if you're deciding to raise funds, I think it's coming at it with real intention and being like, is this what I need right now? Is this going to help me get to my next stage? Or can I do it myself? And I think I'm very independent and I want to make sure I can do it myself first. But in saying that, we have had a lot of interest in terms of investment. And as you said earlier in the conversation, there's a lot of hype around Generalist World at the moment. I guess I'm being very protective of that. I would consider funding in the future, but for now, I'm just laser focused on what's the most important thing. And that's having a really, really fantastic community on one side. And then on the other, it's getting people awesome jobs.
Yeah, you're creating the supply, and then I guess later on you can figure out how you monetize the demand, is what it sounds like. And you're like making on the buy by having there's a paid tier of the community, which is friggin' awesome. I guess it's really interesting to hear you talk, because you're building like this money printing machine, and you're going, well, at some point in the future, it's just a case of getting more fuel into that machine. And, venture capital might be a good way of doing it. But for now, there's no need to take that on. So it'd be really interesting as well, if you don't mind sharing. Something else we talk about is optimizing business operations. How do you do things more efficiently? And you've essentially said, well, I'm a badass and I can build it all, which is awesome. So at the moment, you're doing the freelancing, you're also building the community, and the community is profitable. It sounds like. Is it just you, or do you have a couple of freelancers doing a few bits for you?
It's a great question. And it is 100% not just me. If you see all of the moving parts of Generalist World, I would be completely burnt out if I tried to do that all myself. If I'm honest, it was actually a difficult thing for me to do. I think I had a bit of weird ego around it, but it got to the point where there were so many opportunities coming in. There were so many things that I wanted to do. I couldn't do it on my own. I couldn't yet afford to hire people. And so I put the word out to the community, to the people who were already there. And I was like, would anyone like to help me build this on a volunteer basis? And there has been no exchange of one day you'll get this or one day you'll get that. It's very much on the agreement that they're really happy that this exists and they would like to contribute to making it work. And I think everyone's very aware it's still very early stage. So it's yeah, heck yeah, like this is an awesome concept. I think we have now about 13 or 14 people who are volunteering and helping me build this, which is completely phenomenal and actually really speaks to how excited people are. So many people, I had to create an Airtable form to keep track of everyone. So I'm very fortunate that folks really believe in the vision. They really believe in the mission. They are happy to give up their time and help see this through.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason I wanted you on the podcast, because I think this is really the power of community, because everyone kind of acknowledges like, well, yeah, maybe it'll exist like this. Maybe it won't. Maybe it should be in Slack. Maybe it shouldn't. Like, so what? Because we're all in it together, and that's the value. Like, it's this connection. Like, we all recognize we're these nodes on a network, and our value is basically a function of the number of connections and the value of those connections. So yeah, why wouldn't we want a community to succeed? And if someone can corral it like you are doing, president, queen, in charge of it, you're the monarch of the generalist world. Like, that's great. Like, people want that facilitator. Okay, that's a very PC way of putting it. I think people need that leadership and that direction, and you're giving that. You've got these buckets of features. So I think what would be really interesting would be break down these buckets of features that exist for the generalist world, because I think we've nailed the benefits, like as mature as they are right now. Like, it's an identity thing. It's a community. So could you break down the buckets of the features, and then it'd be really interesting to me, at least, like how you offloaded each of those buckets to these volunteers. Like, what did that look like? Was it an email? Was it a phone call? Was it a Zoom? Like, are you managing those tasks in some tool? As far as I know, you're not like deeply technical, so you seem to have used a lot of no-code tools. So I guess I'd be really interested in how you set the direction, how you manage that person, and then the tools. Like, if we could maybe do that triad of things for each of these buckets of features that exist in the generalist world, I think that would be super interesting, at least to me, and maybe to the audience, who knows.
We'll see, I hope so. So I see Generalist World made up of 3 buckets. There is the community, there's opportunity, and then there's resource. And that's the high level North Star where we're headed. If we can hit all of those, if we can fill up all of those buckets, it's going to be really, really valuable for anyone turning up into the community. So where I see myself in this kind of role is, like you said, the strategy. So I can see the really big picture. I can see where we want to be taking this. Where I don't see myself is essentially managing people. So I know the way I work. The way I work is I'm very creative, can be a little bit chaotic. I get really excited. I can see something, and then, as you can probably tell from Generalist World, I can quickly roll it out and test it and pivot, and I enjoy that. So I know where my strengths lie, and I know where my weaknesses lie. And so my weaknesses totally lie in like operations, details, nitty-gritty. I suck at that kind of stuff, and I'm okay with that. I've acknowledged it, and I'm like, that's cool. Not for me. I need to get people on board who are way better at that than I am. And that's exactly what I've done. So one person who's come on board in a really big way is Ryan Sides. He's in the community. You may have seen his name around.
Can we give him a shout out?
Go Ryan Sides.
Sure. Where, is he on Twitter, LinkedIn? Where's the best place to contact him?
He's definitely on LinkedIn. I don't think he's a big Twitter user, but I can also drop his LinkedIn in the show notes. So Ryan has been fantastic because he is an operations system. So if you think of me as kind of like the vision person, I communicate that vision to Ryan. Ryan is fantastic at asking me really good questions. He's probably one of the best like question askers, if that's a word, that I've come across yet. And it helps me get to like, right, prioritize where are we headed. And so then you've got Ryan, who is basically helping me with all of the operations, all of these spinning plates. And that's genuinely what it feels like some days, keeping all of these spinning plates spinning. We're actually trying to figure out who would be the best person at the moment to manage all of the volunteers. Because every time you say yes to a volunteer, then it comes with the management side of it.
You've got an overhead.
Exactly. And you want to make sure that there's something in it for them. So like we have a lot of folks volunteering on the community side of things. And the reason they're doing that is because they want to learn how to build a community. So I am being extremely generous with like, well, I'm very open anyway with like all of my knowledge. I'm like, whatever I can give you to help you be able to do this yourself or to be able to apply to your own businesses, then I am so happy to share that. Anyone that's coming in and volunteering, I'm really conscious that I want it to be a win-win. I want them to feel like they're contributing to something, that they belong somewhere, that they're contributing to something bigger than them, but also that they're learning along the way. That might be through network, or it might be through like practically learning, technical skills or whatever it might be. Ryan is kind of like my right-hand man, and he's been really, really essential, to be honest, in helping me stay on track, because like I said, I'm very like creative and can be kind of like chaotic in the way I work. So to have someone that balances that out is really, really crucial for me.
That's awesome. So he's kind of operating like your digital business manager, like your CEO, you're doing sales, marketing, vision. He's doing COO role. So you said you've got these 3 buckets. You've got community, resources, and what was the third one?
Opportunity. So jobs.
Okay, and how are they built? Let's start with community, because at the moment that seems like the most established. Maybe it is, but that from the outside looking in, that's strong. So practically, what are the tools that exist to make the community function? Maybe if you were to talk through a user journey from becoming aware to becoming a member, like how did you build that? What platforms and how long did it take? And if you've anybody else doing maintenance on there, like how have you delegated that to them?
Yeah, so that's a great idea to look at it from the user journey perspective. So how I am acquiring people at the moment, almost everyone is coming from social media, organic social media. So me shouting on LinkedIn and Twitter about why we need generalists, why it's important, the people that we've found, like basically I'm trying to be super vocal about what we're building. Like when you're building a business, you can't be shy about it. You have to put it out there. And I think people are really resonating because it's something that's different. So I'm first acquiring people totally from social media at the moment, organic social. They then land on the website, which is built in Softer. They will then apply via a form which is on Airtable. Airtable is life. Can I just say that? Absolutely adore it. So our whole back end is built on Airtable. I then have a really long list of people, like the wait list now is well over 100 people. I read their application as to why they want to apply. I go and check their LinkedIn or their Twitter. I verify who they say they are. I make sure they're actually going to be a good fit and that they're not just here to join yet another community kind of thing. And then if and when I approve, I pop them into Sendinblue, which is our email marketing software. They will then get a welcome email, which takes them on to Slack. And once they're in Slack, most of our communications happen there. There are a few extra tools I use to make the community experience awesome. So one of them is butter.us. That's what we host all of our events on. We had a really awesome speed networking event last week where like 20 people came, and the feedback at the end, they were like, I didn't want it to end. And I was like, that is a great sign of a great event. So all of our events are hosted on Butter. And I'm also using a platform called Magic. So Magic is created by Rishav. He's actually a member of our community. And it's kind of like a hybrid between Slack and a web platform so that our content can live forever on the web. And it's also a member directory.
Cool. So that's the community bit sounds awesome. So we've got community bucket, resources bucket. Like how does the resource bucket work? Is it because that sounds sort of like the resources and opportunities sound like two sides of the same coin? Are they? I mean, it'd be good to understand that.
Mm-hmm. So the way I see it is, so we've got resource and opportunity. Resource, another word for that could be education. So things like articles or podcasts or videos, basically if people are curious and want to learn more, they can hit this resource hub. And in full like transparency, the resource hub is the last priority on my radar at the moment, but it's one that I see in the future being really, really important. Like what happens when we start partnering with universities, and getting these resources and these courses? What happens when we start going into schools and again, sharing these resources? So resources, like it's on my radar, but it's a lower rank. My two big things at the moment are the community and the opportunity. The opportunity I'd love to speak to because that has been a total journey figuring that out. It came from the idea that generalists should be able to get work that where they don't have to fit into a box, where they are completely able to thrive doing what they do best. And we've kind of identified that that's generally in early stage companies. So companies of 10 or less is like prime position, although we are exploring what happens when we put generalists in companies of up to 50, up to 100. There's all of these questions that still need to be answered.
So I just want to speak to that opportunities. What I saw on there, I looked and I was like, this is no joke, because they're proper roles like COO roles, head of product roles, and that quite often they're offering six figures and, like serious money. And if you've got this itch, as you're an entrepreneur, you don't want a job, let's say, like early stages where you need to accept that you live, because you don't want the confines of a role. Like a company that's scaled has to have process. It has to have, laborious, non-value add activities because it's trying to scale. It needs control, top-down control. And at the moment, the best way to do that is through management structures and whatever else. So you've got to accept, like, if you've got this itch to scratch and you want some sort of security, freelancing, early stage companies is where you need to accept you live. And if you want to see like these, honestly, I was looking at these opportunities and I was like, oh my God, like I wish that it was like crack cocaine for an entrepreneur. I was like, these look great. I wish this existed, 10 years ago, because that's what I would have been doing in my early 20s. So I could not recommend more that people go check that out, because it's genuinely exciting, seriously exciting. Sorry, I cut you off because I got overexcited about it. Please tell us more about the opportunities.
And I'm glad you did, because I kind of want to push back on that notion a little bit. And to be honest, this is not fully thought out. Like, this is something that I'm still figuring out. But I think there's this whole notion that generalists are only good for the beginning stage of a company. And I think that just isn't true. So I think that generalists, we are bomb at like building companies. Like that's totally where we thrive. But I'm really challenging and questioning the idea that then we don't have a place later on. And this is, again, it comes back to the resource. This is why it's all connected. But it's like, why can't a generalist? Because we are problem solvers. We have a wonderful woman, Lucy, in the community who describes a generalist as the thread that ties it all together. We see things cross-functionally. Like, I think there is places for generalists in larger organizations too. I think we just don't have the systems that support that. And I wonder if we were to implement those systems, how much more a business could thrive when you do have generalists at the top. And so that's something I'd like to push back on, because I think as we keep growing this, my hunch is we're going to be able to figure out ways to make sure that we see generalists represented at every stage of a company.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I'm fully on board with you, because I actually want to do a full episode on Queen Elizabeth and her role, because for me, when people go, well, what's the point of the monarch? Like her, very specifically, when you look at what her role was a master generalist. She went around oiling the cogs of so many international agreements, international operations, the governmental operations, and privileged position, there's money involved and whatever else. And we, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong. But from a system optimization point of view, I'm fully on board with you. You need those people that are mavericks inside large organizations. And I guess when I was saying, except this is where you live, I'm talking from some bittersweet experience of trying to do this maverick role in large organizations and getting pissed off with it. So I hope you're right. Like, I so hope you're right. Big organizations will learn to accept you need a couple of loose cannons, and that's okay. And loose cannons with skills. Let's just say not people that are like productive loose cannons.
It's that whole thing. If you do the same thing again and again, and you have the same people again and again, you're going to have the same results. So what if you put these wild cards at the top who see things differently? I'm like, we talk about diversity. I'm like, what about diversity in the way that we think? Like, why is that not valued at the top as well?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. I just want to just tease something out here. So a lot of my personal growth and development has been recognizing that, definitely as a bloke and as an engineer, you have this very mechanical and systematic way of looking at things. And these things that, get referred to like emotions and feelings, they kind of get ignored. Like, well, no, it's a logical process. And I just want to just tease out from our conversation then, I'm almost certain the listeners will have heard it. When we started talking about the bits and bytes and how your operation works, and you're like, well, I've got this awesome guy, and like that was really exciting to you and to me. But then when we got into like, this is just kind of how it works, I felt the energy drop between us, and it was less interesting and exciting to us. I just want to call that out, because when we're talking about optimizing your business, a lot of it is finding the right people to do the right work. And I feel that a lot of people fall out of love with starting their own thing and getting involved because they never manage to associate this feeling, let's call it happiness, and the activities they want to do. And we get bogged down in all of these things we feel we should do and this obligation. And I think there's a lot of societal pressure there. And I just want to call that out. Maybe you have some reflection on it as well. But for me, I noticed that as we were talking, and I'm almost certain the listeners will have heard the energy drop there. It's so clear what you are passionate about and the things you aren't. And it's so clear that those things are the thing that are making this work. Do you have any thoughts on that? By all means, just say no.
Yeah, I do. I think when you're starting a business, it's totally glamorized. People are like, yeah, founders, like this is like, awesome lifestyle. And it can be, but holy heck, it is a grind. It is hard work. It is so difficult to get something off the ground. And that's why so many startups just don't get off the ground. So I think for me, at least, when I can find the parts of the business which give me actual joy, and I mean that, I say that I truly mean joy. When I'm creating something from nothing, that's what makes it worth it. And so when I'm having these big visions and I'm seeing it all come together, like for me to see something go from just an idea in my head to 1,000 people gathered in a community, networking, having these like real world outcomes, getting people jobs, like that is like joyful to me. That is like so exciting. And then like the mechanisms that help me get there, yeah, okay, they're a means to an end. Like I need them, but the beauty of everyone having these different experiences is that someone out there gets gets such satisfaction from getting everything organized and such satisfaction from this process working like automatically. And I'm like, that's cool. Thank God you exist, because I get the joy from the more like big picture things. And I think it's just finding those people and bringing them together and leaning into your strengths, because as a founder, you're expected to do so many things, like literally wear all the hats. But at the end of the day, there's some you're going to enjoy more. And this is a grind. You're going to be grinding at it for a really long time. You may as well enjoy it. And you may as well find other people who can help you with the things that you just like, you don't enjoy.
Absolutely. A reflection on what you're saying there. I think it's neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, there's psychology generally, that we talk about towards and away from motivation. Like away from motivation is, I can't pay the bills, like I'm scared, like it's fear, it's anger, and that's very, very good for short term. It's not very good for long-term motivation. And for long-term motivation, it's the towards. As a founder, you identified it right there. You were like, oh yeah, I've got this vision. It's like 1,000 people in the community doing this and the other. And that's something that's a much more sustainable, and it will help you make better decisions. If you're looking where you're going as opposed to where you've been and what you're running away from, you're much more likely to hit that outcome. And I think Steve Blank on a Maples podcast, he said, entrepreneurship's like chewing glass. Eventually you just get a taste for blood. And I was like, yeah, I can hear that. Like I get that there is a grind there, and you've got to get behind it. But then I heard Sean Puri, who I think, who's on My First Million and was CEO of Bebo and a whole load of other accolades, founder of the Milk Road. He said, nah, mate, like my role is like chewing bubblegum by the pool. And I was like, yes. And I think you need a bit of both, is the truth. I really want to round this out with, what's the vision like? Maybe if you could give it 3, 6, 12 months. And I'd really like you to articulate that in terms of what would make you happy. What would make you happiest in 3, 6, 12 months? Like, forget the mechanics of it, because that'll figure itself out. We've already identified, that's doable. What's going to bring you joy?
Absolutely. So what's going to bring me joy is having something that goes beyond a Slack community. I've said this before, Slack is not a community. Just because you launch something on Slack, that's not a community. So for me, it's all about real world outcomes. So we have a lot of folks who have been working in jobs that they're just really unsatisfied in, that aren't made for them. So for my priority, especially the 3-month one, is matching people with really awesome, like great people getting great jobs. Because I think like work is something that we spend so much of our time doing, like however much percent of our day is inevitably spent working. And so if I can help people find work that they actually really enjoy and they're really good at and they thrive, how much is that going to positively impact the rest of their life and have this knock-on effect? So I'm really, really excited about getting people roles. And someone actually said to me yesterday, they said, well, you've got product market fit if you've got people applying for a role, like basically the community who want jobs. And then if you've got companies coming to you submitting jobs. And like just last week, we had 3 companies in one day submit the hire a generalist form. And I like nearly threw my laptop out the window with excitement. I was like, yes, like people are getting it. Companies are starting to be like, yes, that is actually really smart and valuable and a good investment for us to like hire a generalist. So my short-term goal is that it's getting people matched. So we have I feel like we've got like part 1 of that, which is like the community plus people want to hire. My part 2, which I'm figuring out.
Yeah. You got supply.
Yes, is how to actually match. And right now I am hacking out of that. Yeah, I'm hacking that together, like manually doing all the things that don't scale.
Yeah. It's like those, everything you were saying you did in May, those one-to-one conversations, those like a thread in another group, but now you are doing it for demand. It's kind of like you almost want, not a community, I don't know if it's a community, but like a pool of people that are business owners at a certain scale or I don't know how you define them, but that recognize the need now and they're going to, That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited about that.
You can hear it, like this whole interview, you can hear your passion. So where can people find out more? Website, where should they come and say hello to you? And what should they look for if they want to know more about this or just to get involved?
Yep, so you can find us on Generalist.world. My name is quite unique, Milly Tamati. So you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter under that exact handle. I can also share the handle with you. And yeah, if anyone resonates with this, I'm absolutely delighted when folks are like, heck yes, this is exactly what I've been looking for. I think one of my favorite things to do at the moment is to go and read the reasons why people join the community. I've now got like 900 reasons why. And if I'm ever feeling like low energy or like, oh man, this is a lot, I can just go back and read those reasons why folks are joining the community and be like, this is worth it. Grind through it.
Chew the glass.
And then I'll get to chew the bubblegum down the line. But yeah.
So just for anyone wondering, Milly spelled exactly as you'd expect, Milly, and Tamati, Tamati. So that's Milly Tamati and Generalist.world. Milly, this was a blast. I had a great time.
Woohoo! Me too.
Anyone that's listening, let us know what you think. Comment below. If you want more of this, if you want Milly back on and want to ask some more questions, please let us know and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you so much for attending, Milly, and everyone, thank you for listening. We'll speak to you again soon.